What's going on, everybody? GentleBen94 here. Welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds. Today we are working again on the F-105D Thunderchief, and let's go ahead and recap a little bit of what we have done. Last episode we went ahead and put on the horizontal stabilizers, the wings. We've got the bottom and the top sections put on of the tail cone. Both the landing gears are on. Struts and actuator rods are all good. Front one needs a little bit more work done on it. It's substantial enough right now. Cockpit is in, the front cockpit hood is on, but I don't like the shape of it. Well, I might have to do something with that. And we have some clasps and things like that we need to put on. The rear stabilizer as well, the vertical stabilizing tail, we got to put that on as well. And a couple vents. And of course we have the armament, which we will eventually put on. We've given some choices between drop tanks and bombs in this. So we have a little bit of work to do there. Plus there's antennas and all sorts of things we need to put on. So we're tackling that today. If there's time, I'd like to also get to the canopy, because these have to be masked. And it's a little bit of a process to do that, so depending on how long I run today, I might do that today or I might do it next time. So let's go ahead and jump on the antennas and vents and all that sort of stuff. So you can see here we have one vent that kind of hangs down behind the front landing gear, and it doesn't fit real well into the fuselage. So we're going to have to pull that out, and we're going to probably have to sand it down a little bit. It just doesn't quite fit in there. Again, like any model, this section is no different. We want to go ahead and take the pieces. We want to dry fit it first, make sure it's going to fit. If it doesn't fit, we need to make sure that we can find out why it's not, and then make sure that it does. And of course, we're going to use our jeweler files again. I love these things. I'm not sure how my grandfather got a hold of them, but he had a whole package of them that he gave to me, and they have come in really, really handy. So it fits on very nicely. We'll put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin cement, and that will do that. So that first vent is on. Now let's go ahead and tackle the rear vents. There are two very prominent air scoops that sit in the back of the tail cone, and they just basically feed air, I think, into the engine compartment to make sure that everything stays nice and cool. I'm assuming that's what it does. It could do something totally different. I have no idea. But it looks like it's something that would kind of feed air and kind of keep air circulating around the engine. Because that engine's got to get hot, right? I mean, it just has to have some sort of airflow against it to keep that temperature down. So again, jeweler files are going to be used here just to go ahead and scrape off into these mold lines. There's a little bit of a burr right there we want to take off. I don't like using a hobby knife like this, but it's probably okay to do that. Now we're going to go ahead and place that into the side of the fuselage. There are two very long locating tabs. We're going to need those. It's a lot of slippery here. But there we go. And give a little bit of press. Perfect. So that actually fits really well in there. A little bit of glue will just help to kind of solidify that. I don't think it'd pop out, but might as well glue it, right? Make sure that capillary effect kind of sucks into the cracks there, keep everything nice and glued together. Again, going back to the over-engineering factor on this kit, these intakes are actually two parts. There's the intake part itself, and then there's a top cover. Why not just make it one piece? I don't understand the whole idea of making it two separate pieces. I'm pretty sure, like, for example, the monogram F-105 is an older mold. I'm pretty sure, though, those are either integrated into the fuselage, or they're like one piece by side, but I don't think it's this complicated. I'd be surprised if it was. So I've got one locating tab, hook that right on in there, and a little bit of glue. Always a good idea to keep that glue handy too, because you never really know what's going to happen. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Give it a little bit of pressure there. I want to make sure that we have enough of glue kind of into the areas that's going to go ahead and really stay solidified in there. And we're going to do the other one off camera because it's a lot of the same. So we'll be right back. Alright, so we have both of the external vents glued in, glued around, all that solidified into the side of the fuselage. Give a little bit of pressure, make sure all the glue is nice and adhered. A little bit there. And a little bit on the other side. So let's put that aside for right now, and let's go ahead and focus on some of the antennas and little doodads that stick off the front of this thing. Now there is one in particular that sits in the side of the nose cone, and we're going to use our hobby knife to drill a little bit of a hole there so this can actually fit down inside. Strangely enough, there are no locating tabs for any of these antennas. So this is the only one with a slight little bit of an indentation. We're going to make that a little bit bigger indentation to make sure that fits down inside. Using our tweezers, of course, and a little bit of glue there on that. Ought to work just fine. Let's move on to some of the antennas. There's a couple of different blade antennas that kind of hang off the front, right in front of the landing gear and right behind the landing gear, the front nose landing gear. So we want to make sure that those are on there. We're going to use our tweezers again to go ahead and grip that little piece. And man, that is a really small piece. Like I said before, there is no locating tab at all for this thing. There's a little bit of a panel line that's lightly scribed into the plastic, but that's the only indication you have of where these things go. So I may or may not be placing these in the correct position. The instructions are not that clear about exactly where you should put these things. Again, check your references. Reference might come in handy with this section here. A little bit of jeweler file just to smooth down that area right there. Make sure that's going to sit nice and flush. I'm going to put glue approximately where I think this is going to go. Just a very small amount. And we're just going to place this antenna, press it down against the fuselage, release the tweezers, and we should be good. So we just have to repeat that about 5 or 6 more times, and we'll be right back after we're done. Okay, so we have all of the little itty bitty nose antennas and all that on. We've got the vents on. So let's focus on the front section here. The Thunderchief actually had a bit of a canvas covering over the top of the instrument panel and down towards the front of the canopy. So we're going to reproduce that by using regular old facial tissue paper, also called Kleenex. Now we're just going to use our hobby knife. We're going to cut a very rough square out of this area here and just pull these apart. These are like triple ply, so that should be really, really handy. We'll have a couple little very thin pieces that we can use. Doesn't have to be perfect, you know, doesn't have to be perfect at all. And we are going to create somewhat of a glue mixture, and for that we're going to need a couple of things. First off, we're going to need some sort of mixing dish. We're going to need some water, we're going to need some brushes, we're going to need some sort of maybe a pin vise or a file, and we're going to need some Elmer's school glue. So let's go ahead and get all these things together. I have a syringe here I'm going to load up with some water. It's just plain old water right out of the tap. We're going to use that. Definitely put this aside just in case I need a bit more water. And we're going to use this here. This is your basic Elmer's white school glue. Nothing fancy. And we're going to put a little bit of that into this mixing dish right here. There we go. Actually, I'm not sure how much I want to put in there. That's about enough. Now we're going to take our syringe filled with water and we're just going to put a little bit of water into this mixing cup. There we go. And let's use some sprue for our mixing stick here. Use our flush cuts, snip a little bit off of here. Now we're going to use this and we're just going to mix this all together. At first it's not really going to mix, but the more you agitate it, it's going to eventually kind of blend together. And that's all we really want. We want to have a nice, almost like a whole milk type consistency. This is a little too thick here, so we'll have to probably add a little bit more water. But the idea here is to position the tissue paper and then apply this mixture with a brush. And we're going to need to select a brush too that's going to be wide enough here. That should work. And we're just going to go ahead and fit this in the front here. Let's separate these two plies. Measure it out, see how much we actually need and how much is going to be covered. Oh yeah, this is way too big. Let's go ahead and rip this in half here. Don't worry too much about the harsh edges. We'll be able to kind of push that all together once we get it kind of glued in here. So position the model a little bit off to the side here so you guys can see a little better. Here's my glue mixture, and let's just go ahead and take up a little bit of glue water here, and we're going to start on the left side and just work our way slowly around the coping and the cockpit instrument panel hood, and just place a little bit of this Elmer's school glue and let that kind of soak in. We want this mixture of glue and water to kind of soak into the tissue paper, because then it's going to solidify and it's going to keep whatever shape you put it in. And then it's going to hopefully give us a nice contoured look, a nice look that would resemble some form of canvas. So this should work very well. And I've done this exact technique on tanks. It works great for tarps or for any sort of coverings or blankets or bedrolls, whatever the case may be. It works excellently for 1/35th scale tanks. I would use a little thicker paper towel probably, but this ought to work just fine for this application. And again, we're just going to work step by step, piece by piece, work at the back of the instrument panel hood and work forward. Let's see, we need to position this a little differently. The heads-up display is going to come up right from the center of this. So there's a little indentation, which you could, I suppose, kind of cut a hole in the, I guess, makeshift canvas. But I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to leave it right now, and we'll figure that out when we get to that step. So I've put on one more piece of tissue paper, soaked again in the Elmer's School Glue water mix. And it's looking pretty good. I'm kind of contouring it around here, making sure that it's going to fit nicely. And yeah, I think I like this. So we can kind of see what one looks like. It looks pretty good, kind of draped over there. If you have doubt of how it's going to fit with the front of the canopy, go ahead and take that and just place it on top. You don't have to glue it down. You can just kind of place it and just to kind of get an idea what it will look like. Oh yeah, that looks cool. I like that a lot. All right, so we'll set that aside for right now. This has to dry. It's very damp and it's very wet. You want to make sure that it's going to be cured. While we're waiting, let's go ahead and jump on the vertical stabilizer. And this is like anything else. Again, dry fit, piece by piece, test fit everything before you glue anything. I've already done this off camera. I know this is going to fit. I've already kind of hollowed out the locating tabs. So everything should come together very nicely. A little bit of glue on each of the tabs right there, front and back. And then we're going to put a little bit on the opposite side of that. And we're going to fit this right on the back of the aircraft. There we go. And the left side is going to fit in first. The right side is going to go ahead and sandwich that between those little arches that were molded into the top of the tail cone. All right, here we go. You can kind of get it from the front look here. You want to make sure that that tail surface is on the correct plane. You know, you're going to have right to left for the wings, and you have up and down for the tail surface and any sort of fins. Kind of use that as your guide, and looking pretty good. A little bit of this plastic welder here on the sides will help to kind of fair this in. There's a bit of a step and a bit of a gap between the tail cone and the fuselage. We might have to address that later on, but we'll see how it looks. So, a little bit of tension here, a little bit of pressure ought to help solidify this completely. I want to hold it a bit just to make sure everything will lock up. Let's also move on to the rudder. This is a single piece that's molded. Take our jeweler file, of course, to this and slice off some of the excess sprue. Looking good, nice and smooth. We also want to run the jeweler file along the very top as well, because that will fit into the center there on the stabilizer. It's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and give it a nice test fit. Make sure this will fit in there before we apply any glue to it. Let's just slip this in the top there. There we go. Oh yeah, look at that. And of course fit in the bottom. Ah, it looks nice. Okay, that's actually ready to be glued, so we could just put some glue right on that without having to take it out and change it or anything like that. So a little bit of Tamiya extra thin cement on the top, bottom. You might want to do the sides as well, just to make sure that everything has a little bit of glue on it so that it stays put. And the other side, of course. There we go. One little bead here along the top. And that should do it. Excellent. Looking nice. Look at that. That's cool. So that's going to have to dry, of course, but let's move on to the next section, which would be the rear engine pedals. These kind of act as air brakes. There are actually 4 of them, and they can fold out, and they kind of are positioned around the rear tail cone, around the afterburner nozzle. We are going to be putting them on, doing a little bit of doctoring work to make sure they're going to fit all right. Before we do any of them, let's just take one of them. They're all the exact same. They have the same mold. So let's take one of them here. And we're going to clean this one up. And we're going to test fit it. Each of these engine pedals are actually molded the same way. And they all have little tabs that allow you to actually pose all of these engine pedals open. Now I don't want to do that because every single reference picture I've ever seen always has them closed, except for the very bottom one. You can see here the very bottom one could hang down a little bit, which is okay. That's actually acceptable. But we're going to work on the sides and the top before we do the bottom one. So we're going to have to definitely snip off the little bit of plastic here and here. I might want to take a little jeweler file, clean off that edge, make sure it's nice and smooth and flush. All right, looking good. There's one little burr here on the side. Let's just remove that. There we go. Nice. Okay, looking good. Really make sure these are clean and ready to go before you glue them. Yeah, fit is one thing, but also finish is another thing. You want to make sure that these are sanded, ready to go before you stick them on the model. I would imagine it really sucks to sand these things when you have all of them attached on at the same time. It's probably pretty difficult. That looks like it fits very well, actually. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of glue and apply it here onto the hinge area. And a little glue on the bottom hinge. There we go. And let's just fit this bad boy on here. Should just fit straight into those locating pins. Oh yeah, look at that. Nice. Okay, a little bit of glue on the outside right here along the seam line. And that should be that. Nice, look at that. That looks cool. It's going to be somewhat of a metallic color when we get this all well and done and painted up, ready to go. So we have one down, 3 more to go. Let's go ahead and jump on the other ones. Okay, so we have done the left and the right engine pedal. Now let's go ahead and take care of the very top one here. This one doesn't fit nearly as well as the others, so it's going to take a little bit of cleaning. Go ahead and place that pedal in there and a little bit of glue. Yeah, this thing is looking nice. I like how aggressive this model looks too. Okay, it looks pretty good here. Might have to do a little bit of positioning just to make sure that these are more or less in the right direction. Now, before we do the bottom one, let's go ahead and check our references real quick. So you can see here, these rear engine pedals are kind of open, kind of drooping a little bit there. And here's another one. It's just starting to kind of droop and open up. So let's see if we can find a third one. Third time's a charm, right? Where's a good one here? Okay. Right here. This is a really good one. You can see this one hanging down right there. That open and that bottom one is drooping. So we are well within our right to go ahead and to position that bottom one as far down as we want to put it. But like I said, I don't want to make everything hanging out so much here. So we're just going to go ahead and do a little bit. Just a tiny, tiny bit. We're going to have to definitely cut off some of these areas here, but we're going to leave the 2 tabs so this will sit, kind of hook up inside of that rear engine area. Alright, so fits pretty well. Let's get a little glue in there. Let's get a little glue on the engine and on the engine pedal here. And it looks good. Alright, let's go ahead and fit this one in here and see how it looks. Kind of have to position it up and kind of push it down inside. There we go. Oh yeah, look at that. Just a hint of droop. Not a lot, just a little bit. And we are going to call it here for today. Next time we'll come on back and we'll continue with the model. We're going to do a little bit of work on the canopy and a little bit of masking. And overall, we have really assembled a lot of the bits and pieces on this. We've got the engine pedals on, we've got the stabilizer, got a couple landing lights to do. Of course, this front section here has to dry thoroughly. We don't want to reactivate it and make it moist again before it's ready. And other than that, we are looking good. Do a little sanding off camera, and we will see you next time on Ben Builds. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.